Good morning. It's September 21st, and it's my cousin Emily's 18th birthday. Yeah, I am feeling old since you asked.
This is,
Next book on the favorites list is Paper Towns. That's not all.
Hi.
So for some reason today I'm feeling the need to get in touch with my inner child. And since I happen to be standing in front of the bookshelf background, I'm going to talk about children's literature. I know, because I haven't talked about that enough yet, right? If you've been following my favorite books reviews for pretty much the entirety of the summer, then you know that I'm a big fan of children's literature. I have a great deal of respect for authors who are talented enough to write good, compelling stories for children that really treat them like adults. I fell in love with a lot of these stories as a kid, and I still enjoy reading them as a 25, almost 26-year-old. So today I am counting down my top 10 picks for authors of children's literature. These are the 10 children's authors that I would most frequently recommend for anyone who wants to read children's literature. They're all great storytellers, they've had a huge impact both on children's literature and on me personally, and I just really like them. Now there are a lot of great children's authors out there, and unfortunately I'm going to have to leave a lot of them off of the list. Some of those children's authors might be your favorite children's authors, so if I do leave a children's author off of this top 10 list, then please let me know in the comments. And I will give you one of three responses. 1, I've never heard of / never read anything by that author, but I'll be sure to get on that soon. 2, I didn't put that children's author on the top 10 list for this reason. Or 3, God, what was I thinking? Of course I should have put that person on the top 10 list. So, with that being said, here are my top 10 picks for children's authors. Number 10, Bruce Coville, author of My Teacher is an Alien, Aliens Ate My Homework, and the Magic Shop series. Again, if you've been watching my favorite books reviews, then you already know how I feel about this author. I said then, and I still believe now, that Bruce Coville is one of the most underrated authors in the world. He was very popular in his day, but no one really talks about him anymore. Nobody really seems to be reading his books, and I think that's a shame because they're really, really good stories. He operates mainly in the sci-fi, fantasy, and horror genres, and while his stories are definitely written for kids, they have some very mature and adult messages and themes to them. I don't know how well adults might enjoy his stories, but I know that kids definitely enjoy his stories, so if you have a kid who's looking for something to read, find a Bruce Coville book. Number 9, T.A. Barron, author of the Lost Years of Merlin series and the Great Tree of Avalon series. T.A. Barron's another author that you might not have heard of. I haven't reviewed anything of his on my channel yet, but I am planning on reviewing the Lost Years of Merlin series, which is how I encountered this author. T.A. Barron is a wonderful writer of fantasy. He's incredibly creative with the things that he comes up with. For instance, the Lost Years of Merlin series is about Merlin of the Arthurian legend, and about how, as an adolescent, he found this magical realm called Fincaera, which is kind of a link between our world and the other world. So while it is technically Arthurian legend literature, and it's looking at an already existing character, there's also a great deal here that's new and creative. A lot of T.A. Barron's stuff is so creative that you read it and you think, no human being could have possibly come up with this, this has to be real. And you understand that when I say this, I'm talking about things like magic and dragons and that sort of thing. So if you're looking for a great children's fantasy author, T.A. Barron is definitely up there. Number 8, Cornelia Funke, author of the Inkheart trilogy. Earlier this year I finally read The Never-Ending Story by Michael Ende, and it quickly became one of my favorite novels of all time. Cornelia Funke's Inkworld trilogy is in that same vein. Not only is it an incredibly creative fantasy series, but it also has a lot to say about storytelling, the role of storytelling, and the different aspects of storytelling. We get to see the author, the reader, the book collector, the book binder, all of these different people that have some role to play in the art of storytelling. And it's all really brilliantly woven together. Now at this point I haven't actually read anything else by Cornelia Funke other than the Inkworld trilogy, but if her other stories are as brilliant as this story, then she's definitely recommended. Number 7, Roald Dahl, author of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, James and the Giant Peach, and Matilda. Well, yeah, kind of a no-brainer. You can't give a top 10 list of great children's writers without including Roald Dahl, can you? Roald Dahl really changed the way that we think of children's literature, and in addition to that, his stories really do still hold up today. And another great testament to Roald Dahl's writing is that he got better the older he got, so one of the last books that he wrote, Matilda, was also one of the best books that he wrote. I think a lot of us grew up hearing the stories of Roald Dahl, and I hope that that doesn't go away anytime soon. Number 6, J.K. Rowling, author of the Harry Potter series. Again, kind of a no-brainer. This is one of those authors I was mentioning earlier that was very heavily influenced by Roald Dahl, and it shows. She has the same kind of whimsical style. And she writes these very lighthearted stories, but on the other hand, she also weaves in a lot of really dark elements and a lot of really adult themes. She doesn't shirk away from difficult issues, and she doesn't talk down to her audience, and I really respect that. And I think that's why adults enjoy her books as much as kids do. Now at this point the Harry Potter series is still relatively new, so who knows if it'll hold up with successive generations, but I like to think that it will. Number 5, Rick Riordan, author of the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series and the Kane Chronicles. Now you might actually wonder why I'm putting Rick Riordan above J.K. Rowling. I have a few reasons for this. For one thing, I kind of like his writing style a little bit better than J.K. Rowling's. His most recent story, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, deals directly with Greek mythology, which I love. And honestly, a lot of adaptations of Greek mythology really shirk away from some of the more difficult and not child-friendly issues that are addressed in Greek mythology. Disney's Hercules. Rick Riordan doesn't. I mean, it's not kid inappropriate, but he doesn't shirk away from these issues, and he recognizes that a lot of these issues are difficult and more adult than most kids are used to seeing. And once again, that's why we love his stories. And also keep in mind that J.K. Rowling has really only written the Harry Potter series. We don't know if she'll be able to write anything else. Whereas Rick Riordan has already started on a second series, the Kane Chronicles, which looks at Egyptian mythology rather than Greek mythology. It's a completely different story with completely different characters and different ideas. It just happens to look at Egyptian mythology. The first book is called The Red Pyramid, and if you haven't checked it out yet, go and give it a read. Number 4, Frances Hodgson Burnett, author of A Little Princess and the Secret Garden. Okay, this is actually a point of argument between me and my sister. My older sister Kate continues to maintain that Frances Hodgson Burnett should be the best children's author. The reason is simple. Frances Hodgson Burnett was writing stories way before Roald Dahl was. So she was writing modern children's stories before it was fashionable to do so, when the pinnacle of children's literature was L. Frank Baum. And yet her stories still really hold up. I still think that the top 3 on this list are better than Frances Hodgson Burnett. However, everything that Kate says was true, and Frances Hodgson Burnett is a wonderful storyteller. Well, was a wonderful storyteller. She's been dead for some time now. Also, as far as her stories are concerned, I'm really only familiar with 2 of them, A Little Princess and The Secret Garden, and even with The Secret Garden, I haven't actually read the book. I've only seen the musical and the movie. So if you have not had the pleasure of reading the stories of Frances Hodgson Burnett, do so. Number 3, Lois Lowry, author of The Giver, Number the Stars, and the Anastasia series. Now here is a prolific author. This author has, I think, dabbled in almost every genre. She's written historical fiction, fantasy, dystopian novels, and just regular coming-of-age fiction. She has a wonderful writing style, her characters are always really relatable to kids, and the issues that she addresses are, again, very mature and very grown up. You've got Number the Stars talking about genocide, I mean not directly, but essentially talking about genocide and the persecution of the Jews. You've got The Giver giving us actually a very scary vision of the future. And you've got some definite life issues discussed with the Anastasia series as well. I think most of us have read at least one Lois Lowry story, so I think you can all attest that they were a major part of our childhoods. Number 2, Lois Sachar, author of the Wayside School series, Holes, and There's a Boy in the Girl's Bathroom. I honestly cannot say enough good about this author. I love Lois Sachar's children's stories. His Wayside School collection is probably one of the most creative collections of stories that I've ever read. I don't think I've read an author who can better combine ridiculousness with familiarity. The characters in his books are so exaggerated and yet so familiar at the same time, and I absolutely love that. And plus, the stories are really compelling and interesting, and they have some really good points to make, especially There's a Boy in the Girl's Bathroom, which I still think is his best novel ever written. Now lately Lois Sachar started writing stories for older audiences with Small Steps and Card Turner, and those are really good stories too, but I really think Lois Sachar's talent lies with children's novels. So go check out the stories of Lois Sachar, and if you do happen to read the Wayside School series, just remember, don't take it too seriously. And my number 1 pick for an author of children's literature is Madeleine LEngle, author of A Wrinkle in Time. And the reason why she's so good, she doesn't write children's stories. She writes stories. In other words, she never sat down with the intent of writing a book for children. She sat down with the intent of writing a compelling story, and if children happen to enjoy it, so much the better. So that means that her books are going to challenge young readers with complex words, complex ideas, and complex concepts. And Madeleine LEngle did not see a problem with that, and I think that more people who work with children need to take a page from her book and stop talking down to kids, because kids are not stupid. Like Roald Dahl and Lois Lowry, Madeleine LEngle had a huge impact on children's literature. Sadly, Madeleine LEngle lost her life in 2007, but she left a legacy of great stories behind. If you haven't had a chance to read one of those stories, please do so. So that's my top 10 list of children's authors. If I missed one of your favorite children's authors, please let me know in the comments, and I'll see you tomorrow. Just gonna pretend that that screaming in the background isn't happening. That sounded really ominous.